Good evening. You're watching The Right Stand with me, Poonam Burde. It's been 39 days since Israel's war against Hamas began. Israeli Defense Forces have struck 4,300 targets till date in their attempt to obliterate the terror group. Hospitals have now become battlefields, unfortunately. Doctors have come out and cried for help for the dozens of patients, including babies who remain trapped inside. They've described the situation as being inside a circle of death. There is no place or opportunity to bury the dead, said the hospital authorities, as the fighting continues outside. Now, Israeli tanks have advanced to the gates of Gaza's biggest hospital in the north. It claims that there are tunnels below that hospital enclave that houses headquarters for Hamas fighters who are using these patients and these innocent civilians as shields. A claim that's been outrightly rejected by Hamas-controlled ministry in Gaza. But which side really is responsible for pushing hospitals into the line of fire? We decode that on this edition of The Right Stand. But first, let's tell you what the cost of this war has been, what the casualty figures really stand at. This is what the war looks like today, 39 days later. 11,200 or more Palestinians have been killed in Gaza so far. The number of Palestinians injured is well above 26,000. The population that has been displaced in Gaza is 70%. Israel says that many of them have been moved southward for their own safety. The number of Israelis killed stands at over 1,400 as far as Israeli Defense Forces go, including the civilians that were killed when terror first struck on the 7th of October. The number of hostages that have been taken by Hamas are at about 240, many of whom might be released in the next few days as promised in a deal of prisoner swap, so to say, by the Hamas terrorists. So why are Israeli forces standing guard outside the best equipped hospital in Gaza? What really has happened that it's come down to this? Here's what the Israeli Defense Forces are claiming. These are visuals that they got to us and of tunnels that were being built that they claim these are tunnels built by Hamas that lead to the Gaza hospital. They're right below the hospital, which is why they need to advance into the hospital and obliterate this network. Terrorists are hiding and operating from inside the hospital is what Israeli Defense Forces are claiming. They've also released video footage to prove that claim, which I'll just be bringing to you in a short while from now. Weapons are being stored at the hospital's basement. We had an IDF spokesperson today actually go inside that hospital, show you that cache of arms there, which was in the basement, above which stands the hospital. There are hostages that are being held captive here is also the claim that Israel is making, that they could hear sounds, that they could feel that there were hostages that were being held in that basement, in those tunnels underneath this hospital, which is why they need to stand guard there to ensure that none of them are killed. Motorcycles are being used to ferry these hostages is also what Israel is claiming. Now, Israel says they have evidence that Hamas is using these hospitals as their headquarters, as their arsenal factories. They've shared pictures from the Rantisi hospital enclave and the neighborhood. Let me show you those pictures. Here is one of them that has been shared by the Israeli Defense Forces. They claim that there is a house of a senior official right next to a school. It's right behind there. There you can see on your screens. That is the house of the senior Hamas official. There's a school right there. There is a tunnel that comes out of it that leads from the house of the senior Hamas official into the Rantisi hospital, which was stormed today by the Israeli forces. Then they released another picture. This is what it looked like. This is the dig site is what they claim. This is what it looked like before the tunnel was built while the construction was on. Israel says this shows the entrenchment of Hamas and its terror infrastructure. You can see there's a UN building that's right in the neighborhood as well. So nothing is being spared by the Hamas terrorists, it was Israel claims. They then also shared video. This video is from outside a hospital. It's the Al-Quds hospital. Look at this man here. Israel says this is a man who runs with an RPG launcher into the hospital right after he fires an RPG rocket towards tanks that were standing guard towards Israeli forces there. So he comes out of the hospital, uses the RPG launcher and then walks back inside to get cover. Now, the Israeli Defense Minister has said that Israel has gained control of most of Gaza. He said Hamas has lost control of the Gaza Strip that it has ruled for 16 long years. The Israeli army said it has captured multiple institutions that are run by Hamas, especially as far as the Gaza city is concerned. Their mission, of course, is to end the war, and this is the beginning of the end. This is how Israeli forces have been mounting the offensive. On the 6th of November, IDF encircled Gaza city along the border. A week later, yesterday, on the 13th of November, IDF took control of the Gazan Parliament building. On the same day, they also closed in on the Al-Shifa hospital, a standing guard now right outside the hospital. And then they said that they've also encircled the Rantisi hospital. They stormed it, revealed the terror factory that lied within. Now, hospitals in Gaza have come under fire. It's not just one or two, there are several of them. All of them from Israeli forces, and they have accused Hamas fighters of using these hospitals for their own military gain, of using these civilians as shields. These are the hospitals that are affected. This is the Gaza Strip. Like I said, it's not just one or two hospitals. Look at the amount of the number of hospitals that have been facing the brunt of this war. All of these are caught in the crossfire with patients inside, babies, infants inside who have been bearing the brunt of it. All of these hospitals have reportedly run out of fuel. They're facing shortage of medical aid. Some hospitals have also ceased to function because troops are encircling them. There's absolutely no way to keep them running because there is no power, there is no oxygen. The yellow line that you see, this is the border. The line that you see there, that's the yellow line. That is the evacuation road that has been declared by Israel. Israel says that is the border crossing, the safe haven as far as taking people out is concerned. The purple markings are where Israel is conducting its ground offensive, and that is only going to escalate in the coming few days. Here is a breakdown of the claims that have been made by both sides as far as using hospitals are concerned or attacking hospitals are concerned. The Al-Shifa hospital was one of the hospitals that saw perhaps the deadliest attacks there. The Palestinian side said that patients are dying there due to lack of oxygen because Israel is blocking it. Israel went on to say that Hamas is using it for military purposes and all they're doing is trying to choke the terror infrastructure and not the people that lie inside. We have another hospital then. Then the Palestinian side came and said that lives are at risk as incubators are running out of fuel, and it is the Israeli side that's ensuring that this fuel does not reach them anymore. To which Israel came out and said that we in fact did provide incubators and fuel to this hospital, but because Hamas threatened the hospital staff, it lies there untouched. The Al-Ahli hospital, Palestinian side said that Israeli forces are behind a deadly explosion that took place there. To which Israel came out and countered that terrorists in Gaza have attacked the hospital. They wanted to attack Israeli forces, but in the end ended up attacking the hospital itself. As far as the attack on the Al-Quds hospital is concerned, Palestine said that hospital ceases operations amid these Israeli attacks and there are people that are left in the lurch. To which Israel came out and said that there are terrorists hiding inside the hospital who attacked the troops, which is why they had to take action. Claims and counterclaims are being made from both sides. Depending on whose side you're hearing, you decide whether who's the victim here, who is the oppressor. That narrative changes depending on who you're speaking to. But unfortunately, civilians, babies, patients, infants are caught in the crossfire. But who exactly is responsible? Has Hamas exposed themselves? Has Hamas exposed their facade? And are they really using hospitals as shields? That's our big debate tonight.
No sign of any civilians here, and the soldiers have been telling us that even inside the stores they've been fighting things like rocket-propelled grenades ready to use against them as they were advancing through this area.
Hamas is using hospitals, like we showed the evidence in Shifa Hospital. In other hospitals, we are now seeing it in live in Rantisi Hospital. An operation still conducting right now.
हमास के आतंकियों के हथियारों के जखीरे को दिखाने के लिए एक मिलिट्री बेस पे, जूलियस मिलिट्री बेस पे, और ये देख सकते हैं ये माइंस आपको दिखा रहे हैं इस वक्त हम अपने कैमरे पर। हमारे कैमरा पर्सन करम सिंह लगातार हथियारों का जखीरा एक के बाद एक, सैकड़ों हजारों की संख्या में यहाँ हथियार रखे गए।
And it's my hope and expectation that there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. So I remain somewhat hopeful. The hospital must be protected.
Hello, Moto.
Joining me on this broadcast of The Right Stand, Nada Steinem, Board Chair, International Legal Forum, live from Jerusalem. Faisal Saleh, founder of the Palestinian Museum in the United States, also joins us on this broadcast. And Irina Sukuman, our national security and geopolitical analyst, also joining us. But let me begin by asking Mr. Saleh, the pictures that we're seeing today, the pictures that have come out and released by the IDF, there are tunnels that lead from schools to hospitals, from hospitals allegedly to military establishments or homes of Hamas operatives. These are being used by terrorists for their movement, to stock up their piles. Don't you think this betrays the very cause of the Palestinian people? Because these people, or Hamas, who many would describe as self-proclaimed messiahs of the Palestinian cause, aren't they really the ones that are putting these Gazans in the line of fire?
First of all, I take issue in some of the references that you made. If you're going to call Hamas terrorist, you have to call Israel as terrorist, because Israel is a much bigger terrorist organization than Hamas is. Israel engages in outright terrorism on a daily basis against Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza. And Israel is prosecuting a genocide war against all of the people in Gaza. And Israel's aim is to clear Gaza of all Palestinians and settle it and add it to its territory.
Sure.
So I think your assessment is quite biased here, and you need to be a bit more objective in your approach here.
Sure, but the fact that Hamas is a terror organization is the description that has come to the fore from many world powers. What happened on the 7th of October? What happened on the 7th of October when the music festival was attacked? Is there any other way to describe what happened then other than calling it a terror attack?
Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, just like Israel claims it has the right to defend itself. This thing did not start on October 7th. It started in 1948 when Israel depopulated and destroyed 500 Palestinian villages and expelled 800,000 Palestinians and took over their land, changed the names of their villages. And further, in 1967, Israel has occupied the Gaza and the West Bank, and this occupation had lasted 56 years and has been putting Gaza under siege for 16 years. And there's nobody would tolerate this kind of aggression and this kind of, that is terrorism if there's any other definition for it.
Yes. Sure, and I would like to get in another Steinem in on that as well. You know, Israel for so long has been claiming right since this happened that the action that they are, or the offensive that they are indulging in, is their right to self-defense. But as far as what's happening in the last few days, as far as what's happening in the hospitals in Gaza, babies, infants are being killed in the hospitals because there's lack of electricity, there's lack of oxygen. We've seen over 40 deaths in just the last 3 days because of the lack of these basic necessities as far as a hospital would go. Can there be any justification for that then?
Like Mr. Saleh, I'm not going to quote history. We'll talk about the facts on the ground. I certainly deplore any type of killing of innocent civilians. Unlike Mr. Saleh, I can actually deplore the killing of innocent civilians. Nevertheless, it's interesting in the opening aspect of this program, you've only shown evidence that Israel has provided, and you claim that there is evidence from Hamas. But however, there is all the pictures that you are showing, everything that appeared on your screen, your introduction was completed by analysis that the Israeli army showed. You have not also stated today that the Israeli army made a request to the world to bring in incubators to support newborn children in the hospital, and has requested aid to assist in that. So I don't feel like discussing these particular facts, because if we want to talk about acts of war, and I am a lawyer working in international law, that when a hospital is used as a base for attack against another party, that a hospital loses itself as a protected zone. But also, what is most important, I think, is when this word genocide is put out. Genocide actually has a legal definition that was established right after World War II and has been updated by countries up until last year. There is an international convention against genocide, And in fact, every country has an obligation, every state entity has an obligation to prevent genocide. It is Hamas, which is in its own charter, discusses not Palestinian liberation, but the eradication and annihilation of all Jews. That is in itself genocide. That is a definition of genocide. And Israel has an obligation, not only for itself, but under international law, as well as a state party, as well as a duty as an independent country to actually attack against genocide. That's what international law says. Nevertheless, if Mr. Saleh wishes to quote history, I do not wish to have a debate about history, and I do not wish to talk about the matters because I believe them to be wrong. But I don't think you invited me on this program to discuss those things. Should children be attacked? No. But should children be held hostage by Hamas? Should we talk about that? Should we talk about infants? Should we talk about 2-year-old children that are kidnapped and held as hostages by Hamas? So we talked about an unprovoked attack on civilians on October 7th. Now, if we extrapolate the 1,400 people in our numbers and compare them to the population, that would be over 200,000 Indians who were murdered in one day. I would not expect your country to be sitting and not expecting its citizens, not expecting there to be some kind of self-defense, which is an inherent right that every country has of self-defense. If suddenly in one day 200,000 people were killed in India, I wouldn't suspect that we would be having these conversations.
Sure.
You would be on the attack.
Sure. And the right to defend, as far as Israel is concerned, is something that has been condoned by every country, every world power, really, that we've seen over the last a month and a half or so since this happened on the 7th of October. But there are hostages that have been taken. 240 of them. We don't know what their status really is. They seem to now be using, seem to be used as a bargaining chip, really. And I want to get in Mr. Saleh as well. We're talking about collateral damage. We're talking about innocent lives. What about those 240 people? Many of them are foreign nationals.
Well, how about this? Israel has over 5,000 Palestinian hostages that it's holding in its prisons. These are people that were abducted in the middle of the night after kicking down their doors and going to their houses and blindfolding them and dragging them onto prison. They did not enter the prison as a result of it, responding to an RSVP from the Israeli prison authority. The Palestinians in Israeli prisons are hostages in any definition of the word. And there's no difference between Israel capturing those people and throwing them in prison and what the people that Hamas took and took them as hostages. Both sides have hostages. The only difference is Israel has over 5,000 of these hostages, and some of them have been there for years.
I'm sorry, I cannot have this tit-for-tat conversation. This is not useful. This is not a fair presentation of what the facts are on the ground to discuss 5,000 people who have been prosecuted under the rule of law in Israel, comparing them to innocent civilians.
What law? And there's no law in Israel. There's no law that Palestinians. Palestinians are living under military rule, and you make the laws that you want to make. These are not laws.
I'm not debating these points, sorry. I refuse to debate.
Sure. Let me also get in Irina Sukuman, who's also on this debate. And I want to ask you this. You know, we've been talking about not just this terror attack that happened on the 7th of October. We're also talking about the bigger picture, as Mr. Saleh was also trying to get in the bigger picture, that this is not a one-time thing, this is not a one-month-old thing, this is something that has been going on for decades together. How do you see it then ending? What is the end? Where is that end? And when is that going to happen?
Well, the end of the conflict will depend on the Palestinians. They have been given options to create their own state throughout the entire duration of the conflict. Their leadership has refused, and their leadership has also considers Israel not a legitimate entity. So can there be a peace talk until the Palestinians at least decide to negotiate with Israel in good faith? I doubt it. In terms of Gaza and the solution for Gaza, Hamas will need to be destroyed as a military entity, and more measures will have to be taken to hold it accountable as a political entity outside of Gaza, because they're holding their own citizens hostage. They're preventing their citizens from getting the help they need. Israel offered fuel to Al-Shifa hospital, and that fuel was refused by Hamas. So the next time Hamas starts shedding crocodile tears about all the civilians who are dying in that horrible situation, they only have themselves to blame because they are rejecting aid for out of their political agenda. They hate Israel than they care more than they care about Palestinians. And as for the international community, they have a part to play in the future of Gaza, and that part depends on them. Instead of attacking Israel, they should be working with Israel to hold Hamas accountable, to freeze funding that provides Hamas with the ability to continue its reign of terror over Gaza and beyond its borders, and they should be working as part of a regional coalition to find a political solution for this conflict, to find a better governing structure, and to find a solution for the humanitarian situation. For humanitarian situation, I don't just mean lack of food and those types of shortages which can be easily remedied. I'm talking about the fact that Hamas has taken ideological hold over Gaza. It has been recruiting young children as young as kindergarten age as soldiers. That's complete child abuse, and we have not mentioned that at all. That humanitarian situation will need a regional approach to resolve, because you cannot have a population radicalized by Hamas and living next door to Israel. That's just not something that can resolve, even if you kill all of Hamas leadership in one go.
Sure, but when you talk about when you talk about a political solution, yes, sir, go ahead.
The only real permanent solution that can take place between Israel and Palestine is if Israel is willing to change the nature of its state from being a racist state only for the Jews, excluding anybody who's not Jewish, and treating them as fourth or fifth class citizens. If Israel is willing to live with the Palestinians as equals, each one of them having the same rights under a free society, democratic state, that will be a good solution. That solution would succeed. Anything short of that, where Israel is claiming superiority over Palestinians and calling Palestinians worse than animals, that kind of environment, there's no peace going to happen there with that kind of attitude. So looking forward, in the future, Israel has to change its structure. You cannot have a racist state that's based on race anywhere in the world and expect to have peace.
But can there be peace with violence in the background as well? And last time when we were talking about, Ms. Irina was talking about a political solution, but many in Israel and many experts outside would say that a political solution is not possible because here you cannot be holding talks or holding negotiations with terrorists.
Well, let me say something here, please, hold on. There's nothing that Hamas does that Israel doesn't do, but at 1,000 times more. Name one thing, I challenge you to name one thing that Hamas does that Israel is not doing a lot more of.
Okay. Mr. Saleh is trying to provoke me, and I'm not entering into the dialogue with him because I don't know of any cases, I'll just use one, where any Israelis went into the uteruses of pregnant women, pulled out their babies and beheaded them in the presence of and he's drinking coffee while describing it. Of course. Well, okay, Hamas terrorists have actually recorded it themselves, so I guess
there's no evidence of that.
This guy, perhaps then you should look on the internet a little bit more. Nevertheless, I don't feel there's a need to have this tit-for-tat conversation because the Palestinian people have been offered a state numerous times. They've been offered a state beginning in 1934, an appeal commission, in 1947, and a partition plan, and throughout all, in 1948, in 1967, in the 1990s, in the 1970s with the negotiation with Sadat, in the 1990s in the Oslo Accord. There has been numerous. They've been presented with every so-called need that they had in 2000. If you don't know these things, and perhaps look in history, because this is evidence. Every time they have been offered the things that they claimed that they want, they've refused. So there needs to be definitely a political matter with this, but this is not the time for this. I just don't understand the contextualizing of the murder of what happened and the savagery on October 7th. And to contextualize that is not something that I'm willing to discuss. There is never an excuse for barbaric savagery and terrorism. There never is.
Why are you doing it?
Mr. Salah, I am not going to engage with you on these matters. You can try, but it's not going to work. I'm talking about the facts on the ground. There is no country in the world which would allow an entity living next to them. As I say these things, he drinks casually his coffee because he doesn't wish to hear that what is a matter of law, what is a matter of right to self-defense. Israel is surrounded by enemies. We have peace agreements with many of them, but Hamas seeks our eradication. Sir, I sit in Jerusalem. I do not know where you sit. I suspect it's in the United States. But Hamas wishes to eradicate me, wishes to annihilate me and my family. To claim that Israel is not allowing rights for Palestinians, perhaps you're not aware that 20% of the population of this country happens to be Palestinian. They vote, they elect Arab Muslim parties into the parliament. If that is what some make-believe, if that is not an equality of citizens, I don't know what else would. As a Canadian, whereas I spent most of my life until moving to Israel, we had a similar system. Every minority, I was a Jew and I was permitted to vote. I was permitted to vote as an English person in a French place. Equal rights are given in this country. Now, if you want to talk about a grander scale, we can have that discussion another time. But now we're talking about war. And in any country, if you sitting in the United States were attacked by Canadians who came over and logged and murdered people in the northern parts of Canada, would the United States then come and have this conversation? If Pakistan went and invaded India and killed over 200,000 people in one day, would the world sit silent and talk about contextualizing that murder and savagery? No. The point is, Israel has a right for itself as self-defense. Israel has a right and an obligation under international law to eradicate a genocidal cult. Point final. End of discussion.
Yes, and that right to defend, and that right to defend has been, and that right to defend has been,
my only point,
has been backed by many world powers. But Mr. Saleh, yes, 30 seconds. I also need to get Ms. Irina in before I wrap this up. But 30 seconds to you, sir.
Yes. If the Canadian came and expelled the Americans out of their land into Mexico and stayed there, then the Americans who are in Mexico would have
a justification for terrorism is not something that can be discussed under any terms. Not on any side, no matter what point you say, there's no justification for terrorism. And the fact that you wish to utter the words to justify is an abhorrent view. It's a vile view. It's a Nazi ideology that you should be ashamed to be uttered those words. Because if an innocent child is taken from his mother's arms and killed in her presence, and I know those people where that happened to, and you telling me, and you drink your coffee once again, and you tell me there is a contextualizing of that, that is legitimate, and there's a reason for it, and it can be explained away, then sir, you're acting like the Nazis. You dehumanize Jews, and that is something that I will never accept, and we're willing to have a discussion with you on that basis. There is never a way to contextualize savage barbarism and terrorism. If you wish to put
what Israel is doing now,
I am unwilling to have that discussion now or ever.
The narrative differs on who's the victim and who's the oppressor, depending on who you're speaking to. And I said that right at the outset of this. There will be differing opinions about this entire conflict, and those are exactly what we've heard over the last few decades. But I want Ms. Irina to come in before I wrap this up. And you know, the right to defend itself has been backed for Israel by many countries, but now we have many, including the United States, coming out and cautioning against a complete takeover, against hospitals being made into battlefields. Those words of caution that come in from your allies, from Israel's allies, should they also not be paid heed to them? What is the middle ground? What is the solution for that?
Well, President Biden was very clear that he's against a ceasefire or giving Hamas any sort of advantage that would allow it to rearm and continue attacking. During this entire time, Hamas continued rocket fire at Israel, and it has also been joined by various allies in the region who have also been targeting Israel this entire time. So the United States has been very clear. It has indeed worked with Israel to provide humanitarian aid, which includes daily humanitarian pauses that would allow civilians to leave.
Sure.
It has been very good in balancing these humanitarian issues and coordinating with other countries, and has been supportive of the efforts to keep civilians safe as much as possible. But even the US cannot force Hamas to stop attacking its own population when they are trying to flee battlefields. This is not something US or anyone else can control unless they take action against Hamas as a political entity, completely delegitimize any assistance going towards it, and take action against its leadership that's outside Gaza and that's giving the orders. As far as other countries are concerned, I'm particularly astounded at the members of the Arab coalition who have faced identical circumstances in Yemen when they came under fire from hospitals taken by Houthis, who have now joined Hamas in attacking not only Israel but Saudi Arabia in border clashes, and who have faced the same sort of criticism and attacks from the international community, where Israel defended them from the identical techniques used by Houthis against their defense work in Yemen. And now they're coming out and attacking Israel as if they do not know that Hamas is engaging in completely illegitimate tactics, using human shields.
Sure, and that really seems to be emboldening, or that is what many around the world believe. That is exactly that support, covertly or overtly, is exactly what is emboldening the action that is being unleashed by Hamas on civilians. What started on the 7th of October continues 40 days on.
Wait a minute.
Unfortunately, I'm completely out of time. I have to thank all my guests for joining us here on this broadcast of The Right Stand, but we do have to shift our focus to some more breaking news that's now trickling in. It's election season here in India. Madhya Pradesh goes to polls. It's among the 5 states that go to polls this month. Union Home Minister Amit Shah held a roadshow in Jabalpur just a short while ago. You saw scores of BJP supporters, voters, karyakartas pouring onto the streets of Jabalpur, where Union Home Minister Amit Shah was campaigning. This is the last leg of campaign in the state. 17th is when the state votes for 230-seat strong assembly. The BJP, of course, is hoping for a record win once again. The Congress is confident that they are going to be unseating the BJP this time around. BJP pulling all guns out today in the last leg of campaigning. The Prime Minister himself was campaigning for the BJP just a short while ago. Multiple rallies through the day, and then, of course, a roadshow in Indore. Union Home Minister Amit Shah too had a similar program this day. Several rallies through the state, and then all of that culminating into a roadshow in Jabalpur, where he was campaigning for the BJP candidate. BJP has several heavyweights who are contesting in Madhya Pradesh this time around. Several members of parliament, union ministers, have now been brought in to the campaign ring. The Home Minister there making the last pitch for his party for the upcoming elections. Staying with some political news coming in, Priyanka Gandhi has now been show-caused by the Election Commission. This is for her comments on Prime Minister Modi. This is during campaign trail. A similar show-cause was sent to Arvind Kejriwal as well for the tweets that he had made against the Prime Minister. Now we're given to understand Priyanka Gandhi has also been show-caused. Aman Sharma, my colleague, joining us for more details. Yes, Aman.
Yes, Poonam. So, Priyanka Gandhi during a campaign in Madhya Pradesh had made certain statements trying to link the Prime Minister to a big industrialist, saying that, whatever jobs have not been given, and, Modi should tell why he's given what all he's given to his friends, industrialist friends. That is what Priyanka Gandhi had said in a rally. Now, the Election Commission calling this statement of Priyanka Gandhi as a prima facie a model code violation and asking her to explain by 16th November, that is just after 2 days, on why action should not be taken against her. This was a complaint filed. BJP, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, Mr. Anil Baloni and Om Pathak had gone to the Election Commission on the 10th with this complaint. They had also submitted another complaint that was against Mr. Arvind Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party. That was regarding 2 tweets made by the Aam Aadmi Party from its official handle, again passing certain derogatory remarks, derogatory content against the Prime Minister, trying to link the Prime Minister to a big industrialist. Again, the ECI saying that such kind of content is malicious content, prima facie, and violates the Model Code of Conduct. In that case, in the case of Aam Aadmi Party also, the national convener of the party, Arvind Kejriwal, has been show cause to explain by 16th November why action should not be taken against him. So both Priyanka Gandhi and Arvind Kejriwal have been show cause by the Election Commission for their disparaging comments against the Prime Minister.
How the parties react to this, we'll wait and watch. But for the moment, Aman, thank you so much for getting us the latest. Shifting focus now to debate number 2 here on the right stand. Separatism, the operational word when it comes to various events and happenings that have been witnessed around the world. But this year in particular, there have been events that show an uncomfortable truth. Anti-national elements are getting a free run. Those who are trying to push for secession here in India seem to be getting a free hand in Canada. The Trudeau government seems to be blind to this reality. All they seem to be doing is turn around and blame India for it. Diwali was celebrated with much fanfare around the world, but celebrations in Brampton were marred when Khalistani groups who were holding the Khalistani flag threw stones at those that were celebrating this festival. It's not for the first time. It's happened for a second year in a row. And according to reports, police officers who were there did not take any action. They were mute spectators to those who were instigating violence against Hindus celebrating the Festival of Lights. After the Diwali festivities, an Indian High Commission event that was organized in the Canadian city of Abbotsford was targeted by members of the separatist group Seeks for Justice. A family was even reportedly attacked for standing up to these goons who were disrespecting the Indian flag. Now, the ties between two countries have hit a wall with the killing of separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Why? Because of the allegation levelled by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He claimed that Indian agents were involved in the killing that took place on Canadian soil. The allegation has had massive ripple impact because there was only allegations that were made once that were reiterated 2 days ago, but absolutely no shred of evidence that has been shared. India halted visa applications in response, citing security concerns. New Delhi also expelled Canadian diplomats. They sought parity in the diplomatic presence that Canada had here, and they cited the Vienna Convention for doing so. Once again, that prompted Justin Trudeau to blame India. But India has never once deterred on its stance. Even today, even after the recent provocations, India has drawn the line. They've called out the inaction of the Trudeau administration. Khalistanis are involved in attacks against India. There is no denying that, and that has been made clear to the Canadian side. Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon, he's funded by Pakistan ISI. He's the one orchestrating these attacks, is also what Indian agencies believe. The Canadian police turn mute spectators to most of these attacks. Even when there's clear warning that this is expected to happen, there is no security that is put in place. And when it does happen, they turn mute spectators, is what Indian government has told its Canadian counterparts. The Canadian government is believed to have been encouraging attacks against India as well by this inaction that seems to be emboldening this hate against India. Such instances validate the expulsion of Canadian diplomats by India. It is also as per the Vienna Convention that there should be parity in rank and strength, and that is exactly what India has done. Now, while Trudeau and his ministers are busy blaming and shifting the blame to India, organized crime in the country seems to be soaring. That is something that India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has also pointed to. Gang wars seem to have become common in that country. Let's take a look at what has happened just in the last 6 months of this year. Ripudaman Singh Malik, who was shot dead in Canada, this happened in July 2022. Nijjar was then blamed for his murder. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a designated terrorist by India, was killed in June this year, allegedly by Ripudaman's supporters in what was called as a revenge killing. But Trudeau government and Trudeau himself came out and turned and blamed India for it. Sukhdev Singh, who was wanted by the National Investigation Agency here in India for his links with pro-Khalistani terrorists, was killed in a gang war in September this year. The Lawrence Bishnoi gang claimed responsibility for his murder. And recently, just 2 days ago, gangster Harpreet Uppal and his 11-year-old son were killed in a gang rivalry by unknown assailants. Cops even released the CCTV footage of the alleged accused of the alleged assault. Unfortunately, the crime is only increasing in Canada, but all that Justin Trudeau and his government wants to do is shift the blame. Are they trying to do so to divert attention from their own failings? That's the question we're asking here on this broadcast of The Right Stand. Joining me on the broadcast, Sukhi Chahal, founder and CEO of the Khalsa Today, an activist joining us here. Terry Maluski, author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of Global Khalistan Project, also joining me, and Puneet Sahani, activist, joins me as well. But let me begin by asking Mr. Chahal, because you've first-hand experienced and seen what exactly transpires. So if you could just take us through how there is a free run for anti-India activities in different parts of the country.
Yes, ma'am. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal to everybody. You can see in Canada, it's becoming the safe haven for all these anti-India, like so-called anti-India forces. The incident we are talking about yesterday, what happened in Abbotsford, is just very, very sad. We all have to condemn it, and this is what we are talking about for almost 15 years plus. Because a Sikh family who went to the Gurdwara to pay their respect to the Gurdwara, and they get attacked. Not only one person, four of the family member actually. So their old father, grandfather was there, and then the son was there, and the lady was there, and their son, even their child was there, and it has been attacked in front of the Gurdwara, and even inside the Gurdwara. Then they came outside, and so the kind of language they use. And this is how they threaten to the Sikh community. And earlier we used to say, people used to say, okay, they are only anti-Indian or anti-Hindu, this and that. No, their main activity is very, very scary, very, very concerning to the Sikh community in the diaspora. And intentionally, actually, so they are trying to create a hate among the community, and also trying to suppress the Sikh community. Actually, the 99%, the mainstream silent Sikh community is also a big victim for these radicals, actually, which is a matter of concern.
And in your experience, how have the authorities of the administration, the police have responded to when these things happen?
No action has been taken so far, and you can see actually, so this is not the first time, it's again and again. Again and again, actually, so they have been provided, because they have all the proofs. I don't know what they're waiting for, actually, so they see it every day. And then they come up with, okay, we will be doing investigating this and that. And Mr. Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, he has a pretty much free hand, and so he's issuing the threats to everybody. He's issuing the threats to the diplomats, to the Hindus in Canada, and now he's issuing the threats to the Air India. And what the government is doing, actually, so the Canadian government or even the US government, nobody is taking any action, actually. So we have to understand, actually, so there are some hands and gloves somewhere.
And Terry Maluski, I want to get you in on that. Why do we see this inaction? This is something that has been a point of discussion for years together, especially so in the recent past. At a time when we see gang wars, organized crime that seems to be soaring, is this just a diversionary tactic then by the Canadian government?
Well, the Canadian government for 40 years has been saying, well, it's not our problem, it's an Indian problem. We look the other way. As long as we're not in the line of fire, it's one gangster against another. Nobody much cares if they wipe each other out. And of course, this is a terrible policy, which is going to lead to what you're seeing now. By the way, you didn't even mention in your list of very disturbing incidents, the one recently where Gurpatwant Singh Pannu of Sikhs for Justice urged Hindus to get out of Canada, go back to India. He said, it's just an appalling statement.
Yes.
And now we have the stone throwing in Brampton. The police say, well, send us your video. We'll take a look at it. There don't seem to be any great rush to do anything about it, or to effect any arrests, or to lay any charges. The Abbotsford case that Suki has spoken about, and I commend him for that, because he's called attention to this incident over the flag. Basically, people were trampling on the Indian flag, and they picked up the flag. That was their crime. That's what got them abused right in front of the Gurdwara. Then you have this case, this really alarming case. It can't be overstated. The shooting in Edmonton of Mr. Upal, a reputed gangster of the highest order, cocaine dealer allegedly, rubbed out, and his 11-year-old son. Now we're getting to an area where I think Canadians are going to have to sit up for once and take notice, instead of just letting this all happen on the theory, well, it's not us, it's the Indian diaspora, it's an Indian problem, it's not a Canadian problem. Now it's really becoming a Canadian problem, and I think it's time for some police action and for the government to have a few words with the police about, look, come on now. I mean, if we're going to have this kind of shooting, an 11-year-old boy, and by the way, not by a stray bullet, but this was a deliberately targeted killing. They shot the dad, and they thought, oh, well, we might as well shoot the son as well while we're at it. I mean, things have really gotten out of hand. And as I say, this has been going on for 40 years in Canada, where Canadians have been, in the mainstream, have been indifferent and unwilling to act. They figure, well, we don't want to get involved in India's internal squabbles. Well, I'm sorry, it's not an internal squabble anymore when you have children being shot in the streets of Canada. It's time for action.
And it's not an internal squabble, and it's not India's headache either. Also because diplomatically, Puneet Sahni, it's an issue. Terry Molosky was talking about the latest threat that came to the fore from Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon. In that same threat, he also called for a civilian arrest and declared a reward for the High Commissioner of India to Canada. If that cannot elicit a response from the Canadian government, I mean, can we expect anything more?
So, thank you, Poonam. Like, I'm not in, like India should do this. These are basically criminals, right? And criminals understand deterrence. Like, so, Sukhiji is like an elder brother. He was saying everybody should condemn. Okay, I condemn. I can get it condemned from Mr. Jaishankar and Mr. Modi. What will happen? Nothing will happen. Do you have any effective strategy that, what people are doing, there is a deterrent? So what Indian government can do is basically, like, that's what I suggested, put up a website where, the Sikhs who are being harassed by that, they can upload a video. And if they verify this person is there, they should like debar that person from entering India and, like confiscate their properties. So recently when they did something like that, Terry can actually tell you, it drastically reduced the size of this referendum voters, to like, like a few hundred from like 1,000. So we are not setting the deterrent. You can just cry that Canadians are not doing it. Terry and me can tell you, we are very, very old hands at this. If you see, actually, it may be shocking to you what you are seeing now. It is not the least bit shocking to us who have been on this issue for, like we know this issue for 20 years. And this is not actually they have done this and worse before. And I just want to say about this video. So the video actually, I'll tell you what is actually in that video. So the video is actually 20 minutes long. You are just seeing a clip. I saw the entire video. So this old person, and he has 2-3 young boys who are maybe like 14, 15 years old. And he has a blowhorn and he's just spouting nonsense. And everybody is like repelled by him like a plague, and they are keeping their distance. And what is he saying? Typical nonsense. India has killed, 300,000 Sikhs, and they have raped our women, and the farmers are being, killed, and all kind of this. But their ire is for this Gurdwara committee. Why are the Indians being there? Why are they celebrating Diwali? These are not Sikh themselves, even though they are baptized Sikhs. So they are abusing. And after 10 minutes, finally this family actually bites the provocation and, tries to take the flag. And you suddenly see that they are actually energized. So this is actually the problem, because, we can't, punch them or something like that. So we can't create a physical deterrent. The community can only create a social deterrence, so which we have isolated. But if you basically respond to them, these people actually get amplified and energized. So now that is actually the conundrum what to do. And I just think there has to be an effective deterrent. And the deterrent you can keep requesting till the cows, start flying. Nothing is going to happen. Indian government actually has real tools in its hands to set a deterrent. For example, why have you not banned WSO since now? Everything of this is happening, being justified by Pannu, and whatever you see is being done by WSO. They basically run all kind of nefarious propaganda against the Indian government, against average Indian, and all kinds of this. What would you gain out of WSO? They are basically bullying everybody, and they are defaming Sikhs, and they are defaming India everywhere. Actually, if you list it as a terrorist organization in future, if they try to defame somebody, they will be rejected out of hand. This is actually a terrorist group who is saying nonsense about it.
Sure.
But they have not done this. So I'm just saying, I'm not, I am not a religious person, but I follow Dharma. And Dharma is about what is the responsibility in your hand.
Sure.
Is Indian government doing absolutely what's in its hands or not? I am doing what I can. But I just think Indian government is not doing enough. And
Sure.
Canada will never do enough, and it will bear the consequences.
Sure, the consequences are being felt. As far as what the Indian government needs to do, Terry Molosky, there is perhaps much left to be desired. But as far as action is considered, you were talking about how Canada has always seen the pro-Khalistani sentiment or that movement there as India's issue and not Canada's issue. If then, even though India does take some of these steps, like Puneet was pointing out, like banning some of these organizations, because many of these people who are being killed there, many of these people who are spewing hate there are all designated terrorists by Indian agencies here. That's not stopping the Canadian authorities from doing anything.
I'm not a big fan of banning groups that then pop up under a different name. I mean, it used to be such and such an organization. It used to be the Khalistan Tiger Force. Now it's the Commando Force. They just come up with a new name. It doesn't really make much difference if you do that. The problem in Canada is that Canada has allowed to become normalized what I would call terrorist propaganda. For example, most Indians probably don't know that it's completely normal for a Gurdwara in British Columbia, in Surrey, for example, to have a life-size poster stuck on the outside wall, glorifying as a great man, as a model for Sikh youth, and a hero of the Sikh nation, Talvinder Parmar, the leader of the Air India bomb plot, which blew up the Kanishka in 1985. This was Canada's worst ever mass murderer, is worshipped and glorified as a big hero in Canada publicly. And of course, add to that, we've got incidents like in Brampton this year. We've had this flatbed truck with a diorama celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi in 1984.
Yes. Again,
publicly through the streets of Brampton, Ontario, which is kind of little Punjab, I guess, in Ontario. And on it goes, the killer posters naming and shaming Indian diplomats, painting targets on their backs, and yes, offering large cash rewards for information leading to the discovery of their home addresses.
Yes.
So anyone who wants to get these diplomats knows where to go. I mean, if that isn't inciting violence, inciting bodily harm, then I don't know what is. But apparently, there's no punishment for this in Canada.
And in fact, all we hear from Justin Trudeau and his ministers is that India is to blame, that India is acting unilaterally and is throwing caution to the wind as far as all diplomatic norms are concerned. It's really what's happening in his own backyard is what perhaps Mr. Trudeau should concentrate on. But I have to leave it at that, gentlemen. I thank you so much for joining us here on this broadcast. We are still awaiting a response from the Trudeau administration about the recent threats that were given to India's highest diplomat, the High Commissioner to Canada. We do hope that does not end in a blame game as well, and there is some sort of security that is provided to our diplomats there. I'll leave it at that. It's time for a quick break here on this edition. Thank you so much for watching The Right Stand.
का ही है ज़्यादा तो ये नीचे तो बाकी तो सब बढ़िया है ऐसा मास्क वगैरह भी नहीं लेके आए हम उधर क्या सब कुछ ठीक है यहीं पे थोड़ा सा परेशानी है
After the relief that people of the national capital got just a few days ago after light spells of rains had engulfed the national capital, which meant that the AQI had come down significantly and was hovering in the poor category. Now post Diwali, we are seeing that the AQI has again deteriorated. Currently, I am reporting from Kartavya and just move to the frame and try and show you in the visuals over here that another layer of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. But remember, this is not only smog, but what experts are saying that there is element of fog that is also in these visuals that you are seeing on your screens right now. So yes, the AQI has deteriorated after Diwali, but remember the AQI was already in the severe category at least 2 to 3 days ago, and today as well the AQI is still hovering within the very poor to poor category, but yet it is still very, very difficult for people to breathe out here. Remember, the manner in which the Supreme Court orders of not bursting any sort of crackers was flouted yesterday. There were several cases that were seen out here in the national capital where this order of the Supreme Court of not bursting any sort of cracker was definitely flouted. In fact, the fire department itself had got more than 100 calls till 10 p.m. itself. So it actually shows that the people of the national capital, in fact, the majority of the people of the national capital were actually not bursting crackers, but yes, there was a significant number who were seeing flouting these norms and bursting crackers, because of which we are seeing that the AQI has yet again deteriorated out here in the national capital and is yet again in the very, very poor category. Now today, the prediction from the IMD is that once the sun is out, the wind speeds are likely to pick up and these pollutants would yet again be washed away. And that is the only silver lining for the people out here in the national capital. But remember, over the next few days as well, the AQI is likely to remain in the poor to very poor category, and in fact is likely to deteriorate yet again in the severe category as well because of the wind directions. Now what remains to be seen is to what new plans can the Delhi government and the Delhi administration make sure that they initially make, and make sure that is implemented on the ground to the T, so that some sort of immediate relief .
RP Sanjeev Goenka Group presents CNN News 18 Indian of the Year 2023, and the nominees for the entertainment category are Shah Rukh Khan, Mani Ratnam, Sunny Deol, Deepika Padukone, Manoj Bajpayee. Vote now on www.indianoftheyear.com and choose the Indians conquering the world. RP Sanjeev Goenka Group presents CNN News 18 Indian of the Year 2023, and the nominees for the sports category are Sunil Chhetri, Shubman Gill, Nikhat Zareen, Satwik and Chirag, Neeraj Chopra. Vote now on www.indianoftheyear.com and choose the Indians conquering the world.
To the people out here in the national capital who have been suffering from this deteriorating air quality for at least the last 10 days. Currently, I am reporting from the pollution hotspot out here in the national capital, that is the Anand Vihar bus terminal, and if I could just show you in the visuals around here, the visibility is not as bad as it was expected. The AQI out here in the national capital remains to be in the very poor category, although the measures of GRAP 4 has been implemented. But yes, the manner in which the order of the Supreme Court of not bursting crackers was flouted by several people out here in the national capital, that has made sure that the AQI deteriorates yet again. But if you compare the AQI that is today, the very next day post Diwali, with the yesteryears, you can actually see that the AQI is not as bad as it was expected, and in fact it has somewhere or the other been better than what it was last year at this time around. Also, what we have seen that yes, there were several people who had flouted the norms and had gone ahead and busted crackers through the night on the day of Diwali. But yes, today the AQI has definitely deteriorated, but it is not as bad as it can be seen. On the other hand, we have seen a lot of politics that has already started to happen in this entire matter. The opposition leaders are already coming on record and putting blame on the BJP leaders, because they were the people who instigated people to go ahead and burst these crackers. So yes, the political blame game has already started. But if you speak about the AQI has definitely deteriorated post Diwali, but it is not as bad as it was over the last many years right after the day of Diwali. Currently I am reporting from Akshardham temple, where I could just show you in the visuals around here that yet again today a cloud of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. Remember, over the weekend we saw that there were spells of rain, which meant that the AQI in the national capital had improved significantly. But post Diwali, yet again we are seeing that the AQI in the national capital has yet again deteriorated. The main reason behind this is being said to be the manner in which the norms were flouted by the residents of the national capital even after the orders of the Supreme Court, which meant that there was a blanket ban on bursting of any sort of crackers. That was flouted significantly out here in the national capital, and that is the reason why we are seeing that the AQI out here has yet again deteriorated. Over the next few days, the IMD predicts that the AQI might improve due to the wind conditions, but if you look at the longer run over the next 1 week, the AQI is yet again going to get back into the severe category, which means that it is yet again going to be a troublesome time for the people out here in the national capital region, where yet again they would be forced to breathe in the toxic.
Hello and welcome to this very, very special broadcast, Kings of Cricket. I'm Zaka Jacob. It's the all-important semi-final of the World Cup. It's India versus New Zealand. It's going to happen in front of 50,000 screaming fans at the iconic Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. There will be 1 billion plus